Hey, folks, how's it going? Hope you're all doing well out there. Welcome to Moment of Clarity. I got a lot for you today. We're going to cover how this has been the year of botched executions across America. However, there is a bunch of good news about the death penalty. I never thought I'd say that sentence. There's a bunch of great news about the death penalty. Also, this has been the year of botched proxy wars. You guys hopefully already know that. You're already brought into that understanding of the world. But I'm going to give you another aspect on how this proxy war in Ukraine has been disastrous. So a new aspect that I believe you probably haven't heard, or very few of you have heard. So I'm going to give you that. I also have some great news on what's going on with possible environmental factors in the coming years. Maybe we'll stem off collapse. Wouldn't that be just the best? Wouldn't that be just a lovely holiday gift for all of humanity if it didn't all collapse down around us in the next few years? So, all of that's coming up now. I apologize for last week. As many of you know, as it gets towards the last 20 minutes of the live stream, I do the rest only at rumble.com/Lee Camp. Something went wrong with Rumble. I was unaware something had been wrong with Rumble, so I told everybody to go there, and then it wasn't working. I apologize for that. And in the future, I will always check, I hope, assuming I don't forget, to make sure that it's actually functioning. Because, it's always good. I find in life, it's always good that if you're going to direct people to go somewhere, whether it be like, hey, meet me at this bar, whether it be like, we have a wedding in Europe. If you're going to direct people to go somewhere, it's often good to have that place exist. Often good. So let that be a lesson, everybody. If you're gonna have your wedding, we're doing one of these destination weddings, and you're like, hey, everybody, we're doing it in Wakanda. You should check that that's a real place first. Definitely do that. So this week, hopefully, it'll all be working great. All right. So, and it appears that rumble.com/Lee Camp is working today. So far, at least. So please join me there. But we'll keep going. Let's keep going. So, and I don't know that you've gotten this report from the mainstream media, because they don't generally talk about the death penalty, how the U.S. is one of just a handful of countries. I think it's honestly like 20 or something that actually still have the death penalty. Some may have it on their books, but they don't actually use it. So there's like 20 that actually do it, right? That actually have executions. The U.S. is one of them. We are very, we're barbaric. We're antiquated. We're living in, the Stone Age, where somebody doesn't do something you don't like, and so you have them killed. And we do that with our wars as well. But here's some good news, actually, coming from not the botched execution part of it, which I also will get to. But here's some good news coming from the Death Penalty Information Center. This is their year-end report. So here's the good news before we get to the bad news. Public support of the death penalty is at a near record low, despite the perception that violent crime is up. And you do use the word perception, because I believe violent crime is not actually up, with the exception of possibly murders. There may be more murders in the U.S. right now. However, most of those are coming from the cops anyway. So, and by the way, I covered this earlier in the year, a month ago or something. We're told that 1,000 people are killed by police every year, right? Roughly 1,000 to 1,200 a year in America. It's actually, and this was also covered in the New York Times. It was in the Lancet Medical Journal. This was a large study. It's actually double that, because at least half the time, probably more than double that police kill someone, they get it written off as not being a police killing. So they're strangled to death, they're tasered to death, whatever. And then the coroner says, oh, it was a heart attack, it was this, it was that. And so it doesn't actually go in the books. So really, it's double that crazy number of police killings every year. But let's get into this. So Death Penalty Information Center. As you can see, this is death sentences by year. That has also gone down heavily. I didn't mean to click on that. It's gone down heavily. It was up near death sentences per year. It was up near 300. Jesus Christ, I didn't even know it was that high. 300 death sentences around the year 2000 or just before. And now we're down to roughly 30 a year. So huge decline in death penalties, and I'll get into also, for those of you who don't know, why that is such a good thing and why I'm so opposed to the death penalty and why I have been against it forever. So that's death sentences by year. Executions by year also was at its peak just before 2000 and now is down around 20. So I said 30, around 20. So another piece of very good news that it's down that low. Public support for capital punishment and jury verdicts for death remained near 50-year lows, defying conventional political wisdom. Nearly every measure of change, from new death sentences imposed and executions conducted to public opinion polls and election results, pointed to the continuing durability of the more than 20-year sustained decline of the death penalty in the United States. The 20 new death sentences imposed in 2022 are fewer than any year before the pandemic and just 2 higher than the record lows of the previous years. So basically, we're still at record lows. With the exception of the pandemic years of 2020 and 2021, the 18 executions of 2022 are the fewest since 1991. So this is near record lows. And I feel like I should pause for just a moment before I get to the botched executions side of this. Pause for just a moment and explain why the death penalty is so egregious. And I'll do this in the fast forward version rather than the 15-minute explanation. For those of you who don't know much about the death penalty, who don't study the death penalty, who just, you have a vague inkling that it goes on in America and you either are against it or you support it. And a lot of people who support it are kind of like, well, they did something bad, right? They shouldn't have killed someone. That's their own fault. Here's the thing. A lot of them didn't actually do something bad. The estimates are that 5%, and I know that's a low number, but that still is something. 5% are innocent, fully innocent, like didn't do shit, didn't do a single thing. So 5% are people who legit had nothing to do with whatever murder that's been pinned on them. That's one thing. But beyond that 5%, you have a much larger percentage, which is tough to nail down, of people who, murdered somebody, but were in a fucking horrific situation. Some of them were being abused. Some of them were basically literally sex slaves. Some of them got in a fight where they feared for their life. Maybe they had a knife and the other guy's got a knife and they end up stabbing the guy to death and then they're convicted of death. So there's a lot of things like that where you're like, oh, well, if I were in that situation, if somebody's coming at me with a knife, I might also use my knife that I have on me. I don't have a knife on me. I'm just saying. You guys don't need to back up. I don't have a knife right now. Come back. Chill out. But so there's a lot of reasons that, sadly, that someone ends up in this situation. You get beyond that, you have loads of mentally ill people, like full. I don't mean like, oh, that guy's always been a little kooky. No, I mean like legit hardcore mentally ill. Hardcore is a funny word to use with mentally ill. Dude, I don't know if you've met Terry, but that guy, he is hardcore into his mental illness. Dude, that guy, it's like, yeah, let's do this mental illness. No, but I think it may even be the majority, but a large percentage of executions are done against people who are mentally ill in a very large way. Uh, People that you would, if you met them, you'd be like, oh, they need like a lot of help. They need like a team of therapists. They need whatever meds actually work, unlike antidepressants, which I've done segments actually don't work. 15% of the time, though, antidepressants apparently do work. So if you're in the 15%, I don't blame you. But that means most people using them, 1 out of 6 adults in America, they're not actually working. They just make you feel good. Anyway, so all of those things to know about the death penalty. Then you get into the reasons people try and justify the death penalty. And they say, oh, yeah, and did I also mention that the number one determinant of whether you get the death penalty is race of the victim? Basically, not race of the perpetrator, race of the victim. So you kill a black person, doesn't matter. You kill a white person, oh, now you've wronged society. That's basically how we look at it. But black people are executed at a higher rate than their percentage in society. But you look at the reason people try and justify the death penalty, they go, oh, well, it's eye for an eye. And forgive me, folks, if you've heard me say my joke about this before, but I'm a big fan. I just have a couple of lines of mine out of the billions that I've done that I'm a big fan of. I just have a couple of lines that I really like. And one of them is people say, oh, well, eye for an eye. But that's not how the law works, even in the case of someone stealing an eye. Like, you would think if we were going to do eye for an eye, that would be the one place, the one time you actually do an eye for an eye would be if someone took someone's eye. But in fact, we almost never do eye for an eye. If someone burns your house down, they're not sentenced to have their house burned down. If someone rapes, they're not sentenced to be raped. I get that a lot of people might support that. But I would feel bad for the state person who's state rapist who's in charge, who's got to do that shit. You stab someone, you're not sentenced to be stabbed, etc. You steal someone's email, you're not sentenced to have your email stolen. That's not how our law works in any way. In any way. So the idea that we do it only with the one thing that is the most horrific punishment in the world is insanity and barbaric and fucking childish and unevolved. Then people go, oh, well, it's to get closure. And it's like, dude, if you can't get closure by, sorry, sometimes I slip more into my Southern accent. Dude, if you can't get closure, if the only way you can get closure is by murdering a dude, then you are fucked up yourself, okay? If the only way that you can get closure for someone's death is by murdering someone, then you have some issues that you should be talking to someone about. Furthermore, a lot of the families, I think it may even be over 50%, but let's say it's not still. A lot of the families of people who have been murdered say they don't want the murderer to be executed because then they are basically doing exactly what the murderer did, executing someone. So there are many families where that is not the form of closure that they want. So what about those families? Then a lot of people go to, well, what would you want? How would you feel if a member of your family were murdered? How would you feel if your parents or your brothers or your sisters or something were murdered brutally? What would you want to happen to that guy? And my response to that is, I would want to kill him and then shit in his skull. That's how I would feel. I think that's how most people would feel. But that's also not how we write laws. What would you do if you were at your most maniacal and furious and just wanted to fucking destroy someone? Oh, that's how we're deciding the law now? That's how we're deciding this shit? No. Because what feels good is not how you decide laws. So, and then another answer to that, when people go, well, what would you want if your family member were killed? And another way to respond to that is You mean they're killed because they were killed by a murderer, or you mean they're killed because they were innocent and they're on death row and they were executed by the state, even though they were innocent? What are you asking me? Because those are family. Those people have families too, right? Like Cameron Todd Willingham, the guy who there was a fire at electrical fire at his RV or whatever his trailer park, and the place caught on fire, and he had 3 daughters in there, and he tried to save them, and it was just getting too hot, and he couldn't save them, and he jumped out the window or something, and then the house burned, and he couldn't get back in, and his 3 daughters died, and then they blamed it on him. And arson science is garbage. I want to do a longer segment on how all of these things, all these so-called sciences are garbage. Like arson science is garbage. Like literally been proven to not be provable, proven to not be accurate. Bite mark science is bullshit. Splatter science. Oh, the blood went across the wall that way. That means the killer is Jim. No, it's it's bullshit. We don't know enough about where the blood would splatter if this and that and this and that happened. Anyway. All right. So I hope I answered. Oh, there's one more. People go, oh, well, it costs money to have people in prison. Why you think I'm going to pay my tax dollars? This is another answer. People go, you think I'm going to pay my tax dollars to take care of a murderer? It's actually been shown that it costs more to execute someone than to keep them in prison for years and years. How could that be, you ask? How could it be that it costs more to execute someone? It costs more because there are mandatory appeals. There are a lot of lawyers involved. It's a whole long system that often lasts 20 to 30 years to execute someone. And all that costs money. So if you don't like your tax dollars going to something, then you should want them not to be executed. You should want us not to have the death penalty. Okay, so back to the botched executions. Oh, actually, there's one more piece of good news. On December 13th, 2022, Oregon Governor Kate Brown announced the commutation of the capital sentences of all 17 death row prisoners and instructed corrections officials to begin dismantling the state's execution chamber. The commutations completed what she called the near abolition of the death penalty by the state legislature in 2019. 37 states, nearly 3/4 of the country, have now abolished the death penalty or not carried out execution in more than a decade. So 37 states have basically gotten rid of the death penalty because they're not barbaric and childish and unevolved. Okay, so let's get to the botched part. 2022 could be called the year of the botched execution because of the high number of states with failed or bungled execution. 7 of the 20 execution attempts were visibly problematic, an astonishing 35% as a result of executioner incompetence, failures to follow protocols, or defects in the protocols themselves. On July 28, 2022, executioners in Alabama took 3 hours to set an IV line before putting Joe James Jr. to death. The longest botched lethal injection execution in U.S. history. 3 hours of being executed. Executions were put on hold in Alabama, Tennessee, Idaho, and South Carolina when the states were unable to follow execution protocols. Idaho scheduled an execution without the drugs to carry it out. Kind of important. You remember earlier in this live stream when I said if you're going to invite somebody to something, make sure it exists. Another good rule of thumb for life is if you're going to kill someone and you set a date, you should have the method to kill them. Don't show up to a gunfight without any guns. By the way, another line of mine. This is rehashing old Lee Camp jokes, apparently, today. Another old line of mine is, you've heard the expression, don't bring a knife to a gunfight. I live by a different expression. Don't go to a gunfight. It's a good way to live. Executions were put on hold. Oh, yeah, I did that. Idaho scheduled execution with no drugs. One execution did not occur in Oklahoma because the state did not have custody of the prisoner and had not made arrangements for his transfer before scheduling him to put him to death. Oh, rule of life number 3. If you're going to execute somebody, make sure you have them somewhere. Make sure that's a thing. Yeah, so we're gonna kill Danny on Tuesday. One issue: Danny actually is in Thailand, and we don't have any way to get him. We actually don't know where he is. We know he's somewhere in Thailand, but that's about where it ends. But we're gonna kill him on Tuesday. Maybe they were doing that. Maybe they were trying to live by the secret. Maybe that's what they were doing. Maybe what state was that? Oklahoma. Maybe Oklahoma was just like, well, we don't have the prisoner. But, if you will it, it will happen. So we'll just think a lot about killing Danny, and then he'll be here. I don't think that's how that works. All right. So all of those botched executions, something I did a segment on Redacted Tonight a couple of years ago is that the Trump administration. So let me back up. The U.S. had been getting their chemicals to kill people from other countries, I think like Denmark and or Norway or something, and many of those countries, or maybe all of them, said they no longer wanted to be involved in the death industry. Well, maybe they still make weapons, I don't know, but they didn't want to send execution drugs, and so they cut off the execution drug supply to the U.S. The U.S., this was during Trump, wanted to keep killing people. I mean, why would you not? It's just a good time, right? And they didn't have the drug. So they started amassing the drug supply, like hoarding it, because they were afraid. It's kind of like the Seinfeld episode where pharmaceuticals were taking the diaphragm form of sexual protection. What's called to not get pregnant. Whatever the technical term is, I've lost it right now. But they were taking the diaphragm out the market. So Elaine buys like 15 boxes. She buys the entire drugstore out so that she can continue to have sex in her preferred way. It's kind of like that. The U.S. was hoarding chemicals, contraceptives, hoarding chemicals to make sure we could keep killing people. But apparently, many of these states have still run out, and therefore they have tried other things, which have all been a disaster. So this is the year of botched executions. The other ones that were botched, some of them ended up with the prisoner writhing in pain, saying it felt like his blood was on fire, all this horrible shit. And I know some of you are going, well, he fucking killed someone. That's good. That's great that he's in pain. And it's like, yeah, but some of these people are innocent. Many of them are mentally ill. I hope you are not like, yeah, just fucking kill mentally ill people and innocent people and everything else. All right, one more note on this story before I move on to the next one. UN experts also came out recently and called for the end of the death penalty. They said they called for the complete abolition of the death penalty as the only viable path. And by the way, I always think it's good to highlight whenever they have a photo of these activists, I should just pause on that and be like, these people rock, so that they, I'm in love with this girl. I don't know who she is, but she's fucking standing out there talking about how horrible the death penalty is. So good for her. And these are the real heroes. I mean, these are the people they should fucking build statues to, not like the guy that lost the war back in 200 years ago or whatever. Here on this day, 150 years ago, this guy on a horse lost the war after being one of the greatest traitors the U.S. has ever known. And so we worship him, and we have statues to him, and we kneel down. And I don't know why I'm doing this in this accent. The reality remains that the practice, is that how the article begins? Oh, yeah, it is. The reality remains that in practice, it is almost impossible for states to impose capital punishment while meeting their obligations to respect the human rights of those convicted. A special rapporteur and UN expert on torture, Alice Edwards, and Maurice Tidball Binns. That sounds like a game in an amusement park. Dude, come on. Change your last name. If you've got an amusement park game last name, it's not worth it. It's not worth it to be Tinball Bins. The UN expert investigating extrajudicial and arbitrary executions. They were arbitrary executions is, I guess that's lynching. They were reflecting on the relationship between the death penalty and the absolute prohibition against torture and other cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment, which the U.S. doesn't seem to abide by any of these international rule of law. It's funny because the new catchphrase of these fucking war criminals from the U.S. empire, war criminals, is to say we need an international rule of law or rule of order or rule-based world. That's the new terminology they're using. We break all of those laws, all the international treaty. We torture people. We fucking use chemical weapons on our own people, right? Tear gas, anyone? We use chemical weapons on our own people. We imprison people. Solitary confinement is considered torture. We do that across America as a form of punishment. And that's just a short list of all the ways we use torture and break international norms. That's just the ones off the top of my head, goddammit. The death row phenomenon has long been characterized as a form of not inhumane. I guess it's both inhuman and inhumane. A form of inhuman treatment, as has the near total isolation of those convicted of capital crimes who are then held in unlawful solitary confinement. The UN maintained. So this is the UN coming out and saying that the only way to actually abide by these other international norms, international rule of law, the only way to really abide by is to get rid of the death penalty, because the death penalty, that's another thing people will say if you debate with them about the death penalty. They'll go, well, okay, if you knew 100% that everybody executed was guilty and not mentally ill and a horrible murderer, and you knew all those things, would you be for the death penalty? And here's the thing, no matter what your answer is to that question, that will never exist. It fucking won't exist. So you're asking me to imagine a fairy tale land where every execution is 100% absolutely that this person did it, wasn't feeling threatened for their life, wasn't being completely abused to the point they thought they were going to be killed. You're telling me it's a fairy tale land. It doesn't exist. And they want you to put yourself in that place and then say, oh, yeah, okay, now I support the death penalty. No, you can't support a death penalty in a fucking fairy tale make-believe land. All right, moving on to the next topic. But there you go. This is the year of botched executions, but also a lot of good news in there about the large decrease in support for the death penalty, even among right-wingers. It has gone down a lot, and a large decrease in executions in general. So all great things. All right, I'm about to get to yet another way that this proxy war has backfired against the United States and this next topic again. Never would hear it on the mainstream media. But I want to pause for a second and say, I'm doing a deal on, if you join at leecamp.net, it's right there on the screen. That will forward you to my locals page. You can also click the red locals button if you're on Rumble. It's right there on the screen. Red button. Should take you straight to my locals page. So locals is like Patreon, except it's better. I moved from Patreon to locals for multiple reasons. One of them being that Patreon was deleting people without really giving a reason. They would basically just decide someone was unacceptable and delete them. I couldn't take that risk considering I'm the most censored comedian in America. I'd already lost my YouTube channel. I'd lost my podcast on Spotify. So I wasn't going to sit there at a place that could do that to me at any moment. So I go to Locals. It's like a community there. You can actually, once you're a member, you can actually post your own things as well. And, you know, they won't get deleted unless they're dumb. Don't post any dumb shit. But I'm doing a deal until the end of the year. So at the end of the year, starting next year, it's going to go up. The minimum level is going to go from $5 a year, a month to $6 a month. But if you sign up now at the $5, it will stay like that. So you can continue to be at the $5 a month level as long as you sign up before the end of the year. Also, they're doing a special deal where it'll be $45 for the year. So you sign up for $5 a month, which should be what, $60? $60 a year. But it'll be $45 for the year if you sign up for the year. But on top of all that, you'll get a digital copy of my book, Bullet Points and Punchlines. It's over my shoulder, right there. So you'll get a digital version, a digital copy of that. You'll also get, it's not yet out, my new book that will only be a digital book. And it will be coming out, I'm hoping, in 2 to 3 months. And anybody who's a Locals member of my page will get that for free, the new book. And at least for the first several months when that book comes out, it will only be available if you become a member at Locals. So you could join up, and you're saving money because even a digital book is more than $5 or $6. So you're saving money, but also you get all these. You get 2 books. You get 2 books for free once you've signed up. You get there's also tons of exclusive content. I have exclusive Q&As every Friday where I chat with people. I address all your comments. Unfortunately, when I'm doing these live streams, I've got so much content to get through that I don't really have time to read or respond to the comments. That's what I do on Fridays. Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. I do that every week. So I hope you will at least consider that. Go over to leecamp.net. And if that $5 is just breaks your bank, not doable, absolutely not, then you can still sign up for free. You just won't get the exclusive content and you won't get the books, but you'll still be a member over at Locals. So I hope you'll do that. I hope you'll at least consider signing up over there. And I just thought I'd highlight something. So I've just started a community chat where we chat about a new issue each week. And if you're a member, you can be involved in the chat. So this week I asked people their favorite activist moment, just to show you. And I gave one of mine to start. And I said, you could say the one you feel was the most impactful, the one you feel was the most powerful. You could also say the one you thought was the funniest. So I decided to go funniest. And let's see, where is mine? I guess it's probably the first comment because I put it right under the. Here it is. One of my favorite actions ever was done by one of the activists in the Yes Men, but this was before the Yes Men got going. They somehow got access to a large shipment of talking G.I. Joe figurines and talking Barbies. I do think they had to break into a truck to get them, but I'm fine with that. And they switched the chips inside the figurines. So this meant across America, a few hundred, maybe thousands of Barbies and G.I. Joe went out to kids. And the G.I. Joes, when kids would press the button, the Barbies would say things like, "Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes," or "Cobra Commander has done it again," or whatever. So that's what the Barbies would say. And when kids would press the G.I. Joe button, it would say things like, "Math is hard." And I love shopping. So one of the most amazing activist stunts that I ever. Oh, here it is. Someone posted a link to it. The Barbie Liberation Organization. Amazing. But anyway, so everybody's been posting their favorite activist stunts. Here's another great one where Code Pink showed up in Congress with bloody hands. They've done this multiple times with bloody hands and shoved them in the face of some of our war criminals. Here you see them in front of Condoleezza Rice. But they also did something similar when Kissinger was in Congress. He was testifying or whatever, speaking. You know, they invited him to come speak. And Code Pink, along with someone you may know as my Saturday co-host, Eleanor Goldfield, she was with them as well. They stood up during the hearing and said they were there to arrest a citizen's arrest of Henry Kissinger for being a war criminal. And they had handcuffs and everything, and they went out there and you know, of course, they were escorted out rather quickly. I can't remember if they got arrested. I don't think they did. And some of them had the bloody hands. And then John McCain, who was still alive at the time, called them low-life scum. And I feel like, judging by what John McCain did with his life, I feel like if he calls you low-life scum, then you're doing something right. Anyway, amazing activist stunts. So that is just one example of the exclusive content you'd get to be if you were part of this community at leecamp.net. I am completely independent. I make all my stuff myself. I write all my stuff myself. I'm not censored in any way. I do have a show I produce with Mint Press called Most Censored News. But the only way that I support any of this is by you guys becoming members at basically the cost of what is that? $125 a month is $125 a week. So it's like, I've said this before. It's like the bottom third of a Starbucks coffee. Like the cold third that you leave because you're in a rush and you just throw it out. That's what you pay to be a member at leecamp.net, which is my locals page. All right, let's get to the next topic. This is about Russia dropping. So I was talking about botched proxy wars, and I'm not going to go through all the ways that A, the U.S. created this proxy war in Ukraine. B, the U.S. wants it to keep going for as long as possible and actually stopped peace talks back in April. And actually now, just in the last few weeks, or a week ago, Putin said he wants negotiations. He's open to peace talks. And the U.S. is saying no. And of course, Zelensky, our puppet, is also saying no. So we're just going to do this forever until as many Ukrainians die as possible? Awesome. Cool. Great. Wonderful. Anyway, so I'm not going to go into, I've done too many videos on that stuff, so I'm not going to go into the details of all the ways this is a disaster. But one of the ways that this is a disaster, and if you want to see the dwindling of the U.S. empire, this could be something that you are perhaps excited about. But still, this is a disastrous U.S. foreign policy aspect. Is that Russia is, I know it's going to shock you at first, but there's a lot of details. Russia is dropping the dollar, the US dollar, the petrodollar. Now, I've done many videos before on how a lot of America's power, our ability to have a military the size of which the world has never known, all of those things come largely from the petrodollar and the fact that the US dollar is the world's reserve currency. Now, one of the main reasons it is the reserve currency is because of the petrodollar. So this means that countries buy and sell oil with the dollar, and that is decreasing. The number of countries doing that is decreasing. The U.S. is doing everything it can to stop countries from leaving the petrodollar system. That is the real reason we invaded and destroyed Iraq. That is the real reason we invaded and destroyed largely Syria. That is the real reason we invaded and destroyed Libya. It's all connected to central banking and the petrodollar. So here is Russia. And I think that we thought that our idiot government thought that we could just sanction Russia into oblivion, but they're too big for that. And this is from Multipolarista, great outlet. Russia is dropping the US dollar for the Chinese yuan and fast. In response to Western sanctions, Russia's central bank is dropping the US dollar and will buy Chinese yuan on the foreign exchange market. The yuan's share of Moscow's currency trading increased from 1% to 40 to 45% in 2022. In the span of this year, the Chinese yuan has gone from 1% of Russian trade to 45%. The dollar trade, US dollar, has gone from 80% of Russia's trade to 40%. It has been cut in half. This is devastating to the US. Now, Russia is not as large economically as China. Not even close. China is a very close second to the United States. Russia's like 13th or something, I think, in the world economically. 13 or 15 or something. It's not Russia. They're a competitor militarily. They are not a competitor economically, but their alliance with China makes them a significant portion of it. And the U.S. is, through this proxy war, which we thought was going to cut Russia off, make them a third world country again, instead is having the reverse effect, where it is largely, in many ways, cutting the U.S. off, decreasing the dollar hegemony. Latin America is looking to move outside of the dollar in many countries there, but we keep creating coups. We keep creating coups. A lot of hard K's there, which is supposed to be very funny, I'll have you know. We keep creating coups in Latin America to try and stop that. We're playing whack-a-mole with trying to stop the countries from going outside the dollar. We created 2 coups in 2 days, 2 weeks ago, and one in Argentina, one in Peru. The Argentina one was to stop the VP from running for president, and we succeeded. And of course, you know what's going on in Peru, and the protests continue in Peru. But this is pretty incredible to see that the use of US dollars by Russia has decreased from 80% to 40%. Russia has spent years trying to decrease its dependency on the US dollar, but especially since the escalation of the proxy war in Ukraine in 2022, Moscow has accelerated its drive towards de-dollarization. Numerous Russian banks were disconnected from the SWIFT interbank messaging system, which doesn't sound like much, but SWIFT is actually the kind of core of the central banking. And if you're outside of it, you're pushed out of the U.S. central bank system, which is devastating to a lot of countries. But nowadays, the U.S. is far less powerful, and it's clearly not as devastating to Russia. Russia seems to be doing all right. Washington and Brussels even froze a staggering $300 billion of Russian central bank's foreign exchange reserves. In response, Russia's central bank has largely abandoned the US dollar and euro, and instead it plans to buy Chinese yuan on the currency market. According to the Federal Reserve, the US dollar is involved in around 80% of all global trade. That is where we get our power, and we are losing that. The dollar makes up approximately 60% of globally disclosed official foreign reserves. So basically, the reason these countries keep their reserves in dollars is because the dollar is very stable, has been traditionally. And why is it stable? It's stable largely because of the petrodollar and because the U.S. military is so powerful. But all right, folks, the rest of this, I'm going to move on to some crimes by Israel, some war crimes by Israel, and a actual good news story, actually a very good news story. I'd say in terms of actual impact on the world, probably the best news story that I have yet covered. I will be doing in a moment, and it's all at rumble.com/Lee Camp. Now, if you're going if you're about to reveal this major, important, good news story, why are you putting behind paywall? I'm not. It's at rumble.com/leecamp for free. So please head over there. Join me, rumble.com/leecamp, which is actually working this week. I'm gonna take a rare moment and answer this question because I find it interesting. Medicine Wheel has asked, why are all the best journalists actually comedians? And folks, again, if you're losing the feed right now, it's because you need to head over to rumble.com/leecamp. The reason is because, well, there's a few reasons. One is that comedians are outside of the mainstream media. I mean, yes, some are